Hi there. Many people ask me why their dog's training has stopped working. And I think the key to this question is the part where it stopped working. Because at the start, it obviously worked really, really well. And often when things like this go wrong, it's because you start off at the beginning of your training plan and you're full of excitement and you've got a plan, you make time and you make extra effort to make sure that you're getting the most out of your training. You're really excited to be getting on with your training and you're excited for a future where your dog's behaving differently. And what happens is that as you move further and further into your training plan and time starts to go by, you start to feel like, that things are going well for you. The dog's behavior is changing and you start to just reduce your effort just slightly because you feel like you're winning. And as soon as this happens, your dog starts to realize that now you're not putting as much effort into the training. And then they start to test whether they still need to put as much effort into the training too. And there'll come a time after maybe a week or two where you suddenly start to realize that you're actually hitting more lows than you are highs. And this is the time when you're starting to question whether this is actually going to work for you. Is this a long-term plan? It was working and now it's not. But actually all that's really happened here is that you haven't done it long enough and put enough effort into it for a long enough period of time that you've been able to make this into a habit. You see, at the start of your training, you're putting in all of the effort. You have to make sure that you set your dog up so that the situation is predictable enough for you, you're in control, and you're ready with your treats. You can anticipate how your dog's going to behave. You've set him up really well and he succeeds and you reward that and everything goes really, really, really well. But you're still doing all this effort. The dog is responding very much to the way that you're behaving. And as time goes on, this new behavior from your dog will then start to become a default behavior, as long as they're not performing their old behavior. So in the example of a dog maybe that's very reactive, at the very start of your training, you might prepare yourself, go to the middle of a field, look for suitable dogs to practice on, and give yourself loads of space and loads of room. There might be loads of rewards. As time goes on, you might get caught out in the street. Maybe you're walking down a narrow path or you go around a corner and all of a sudden there's a dog in front of you and your dog defaults to the old behavior. Before you know it, this old behavior is now their regular behavior again. So what kind of happens here is that at the start, you're putting in a lot of the work. When you start your training plan, your dog starts from a lot of experience. So in that example, if your dog's being reactive to other dogs, let's say your dog is reactive to dogs on a daily basis, once per walk, and has been doing this for about 6 months. So we can be sure that your dog has repeated that reactive behavior around 180 times. So that is his default behavior. He's practiced and practiced and practiced that. It's rewarding for him. His brain knows how to do it. It's automatic. So when you come in with a new behavior, you're putting in all the effort. And if you imagine like a set of scales, you've got those 180 experiences on one side. Now you're trying to balance out the scales with your experiences on the other. So when you get started, you're putting all this work in and you're getting loads of success. And that's fantastic. That's all of those good experiences are rewarding and they will start to balance out your scales. But you've got 180 experiences on the bad side of the scales. So you're not going to be able to do this in a week or two. You need to keep putting this effort in until eventually the set of scales starts to tip. At that point then, your dog is now starting to default to the new behavior himself. And this is the point of your training in which he's started to take more initiative of his own and he's starting to make better decisions for himself. So he's not relying on you to do all of that work. But it takes quite a long time before you'll see those scales start to balance out. But when you do, and you start to see that behavior tip, that's when you need to come in really, really hard. Don't feel like you've succeeded and you've won and you've achieved it. This isn't a box that you can tick yet. At this point, the dog is starting to make good decisions, but you need to keep on rewarding those decisions. So we keep adding those good experiences onto that side of the scales. At some point, the scales will overwhelm and he'll have more good experiences and more behavior that you want for him on one side of the scales, and the other scales now become a bit they become unwanted. They're not used anymore. So your brain starts to remove those from their go-to responses, and the new one becomes a default response. Once it's a default response, you're pretty much nearly there. At that point then, your training is nearly done. You need to just keep going for a little bit longer just to make sure that this becomes a new habit now, and the old behavior will soon become a distant memory. So if you think your behavior training is now starting to fail, then most likely it's just because you thought you were winning, and although it felt like you were really only at the very beginning of that training journey. And all you need to do, go back to the beginning of your training plan, remember all of the details. If you have a trainer or behaviorist you're working with, ask them to remind you of the stuff that you were doing in detail. Hit it again with 100% kind of excitement and enthusiasm and effort, and get yourself past that point where your dog is defaulting to the old behavior, and get them to default to the new behavior. Hopefully that's answered your question about why your dog training has stopped working. If it hasn't, and you are working with a trainer, give them a shout, because they will be able to give you some more advice, or maybe they'll be able to tell you how you can tweak it or improve what you're doing. Otherwise, maybe it's time to look for a new plan. Take care for now. Bye-bye.